Hey everyone, welcome back to the Library of Parthos. My name is Sarah and it is February, the month of love and romance. And so what better way to spend this month than thinking about some of our favorite couples? And so I asked ChatGPT to give me a list of some of the most known, most loved couples from fantasy books, and we are going to rank some of those couples today. Now, obviously, I picked couples that I am familiar with. There were many on the list that I do not know. I'm familiar with the book series that they are from, however, I haven't read them. And so we're going to stick with characters that I am familiar with. I have 10 couples already ranked from worst to best, and so we will go through those together. I'll tell you a little bit about why I put them in the place that I did, and we'll see if you can figure out who is at the top of my list. Let's get started with couple number 10. So out of this list of couples that I am familiar with, the absolute worst couple, and this one might be a little controversial in how I'm picking it, I'll explain, but that is Poppy and Castile from Blood and Ash. Here's the thing about this series. I read this book. I skimmed the second and third book because this was absolutely horrible. It wasn't necessarily the story, it was very much in part due to the writing style. The writing style I just thought was awful. It was repetitive. It felt like it wasn't edited well. It was the same phrasing over and over, and it was the whole like trying to make the love interest morally gray, but it wasn't working. It felt like he was just very much a bad person. So I am ranking them at the bottom of my list, and I said it's a little controversial because technically I haven't finished the series, but I feel like I've read enough. I did do a review of this book, and this is a really nice set that I ordered from, I think, Fairy Loot. As soon as it was released, I was like, oh, I need this. This is beautiful. I'm gonna love this series. So this is a lesson to me, and let it be a lesson to you as well, not to spend large amounts of money on limited edition copies of books that you have not read, because you might end up hating them and then, you know, not gonna get that money back. I feel like when I first learned about this series, Poppy and Cass were ranked up there with Reese and Feyre, who I was huge fans of, and so I just kind of assumed that I would love them and was incredibly wrong. So bottom of my list, absolutely last place. If you've not read it, I really don't recommend. Like, you can totally just skip it. Last place, Poppy and Cass. Couple 7, 8, 9 are all from the same book series, universe, all from the same world, and coincidentally I gave away every book that I owned in that series except for this super random one. So let's talk about some of the couples from the Grishaverse. Of these couples, the ones in last place, and this would be in spot number 9 on our ranking, are Alina and Mal / the Darkling. I feel like that whole love triangle just really didn't work for me. I felt like both Mal and Alina were kind of in and out so much. They didn't really seem all that into each other, I thought. But I guess they were, because they kind of end up together. I was much more interested in Alina and the Darkling and pursuing that relationship a little bit more, knowing that it wasn't going to last because obviously he was just after power. But I was much more interested in that. Maybe it's the fact that I prefer a enemies to lovers kind of story with a morally gray character. Maybe it's just personal preference. However, I just really wasn't into them as a thing. From the same universe, couple number 8 is going to be Kaz and Inej from Six of Crows. Now, this is a couple I could totally get behind. I was really invested in their story. I love that they each individually had a goal that they were trying to work toward. Also knowing that they have feelings for each other, but knowing that they're not ready to pursue anything really until they can figure out their other stuff. While I was rooting for them the entire time I was reading Six of Crows, I felt like there just wasn't a whole lot there in terms of placing them on this scale compared to some of the other couples that we'll get to. So honestly, really just for lack of material, they're pretty low on the list. last couple from the Grishaverse is Nina and Matthias. And while there's arguably little content for them as well, what's there is great. And spoiler for the end of the Six of Crows duology, Matthias does get killed, and it absolutely broke my heart to the point that I have King of Scars and Rule of Wolves sitting on a bookshelf right now, and I refuse to read them because I know that he will not be in them. So I was so excited to read about that couple every time I picked up the book, and was so disappointed at the end when he died. So for, again, lack of material kind of brought them lower on the list, and also the fact that they're not a couple anymore because he is physically dead. That is physically impossible. That is what caused them to be lower on our list. Moving out of the Grishaverse and into another universe where we're going to stay for a while, let's talk about the world of Sarah J. Maas. As you may or may not know, I'm a giant Sarah J. Maas fan. I love everything that I've read by her. I've not read the Throne of Glass series, so there will be no Throne of Glass people in this video, but they are a book series that I keep picking up and thinking I need to read it, but I want to do it all in one go, and I just feel like right now I can't commit the time to the entire series. So that, I think that'll be like a summer project when I'm, you know, traveling a little bit more. I got long plane rides and a lot more time to read books in one period, one sitting. But there are plenty of other couples that we can talk about in the world of Sarah J. Maas. So number 6 on my scale is Cassian and Nesta from A Court of Silver Flames. They're in the entire ACOTAR series for the most part. This book is just specifically their story. So in this book, if you're not familiar, they are kind of dealing with the end result of some other events that have happened throughout the book without giving any spoilers. Nesta's trying to find her place in a new environment and find kind of where she fits, and dealing with trauma in addition to that, and Cassian is just kind of there to help her through. The reason that I am ranking them a little bit lower, because I do love them as a couple, is that I felt that it was very physical and there wasn't as much connection as I would have liked. And I know that throughout the book they both grow a lot, particularly Nesta. I know that there are people who were Nesta haters and became big fans of hers by the end of this book, but I did feel like in a lot of ways this was just fan service, which is totally fine, but in terms of ranking the quality of these couples, definitely on the lower side. So number 6 is Nesta and Cassian. So we are now in the top 5 of our list, and this is where things get a little bit crazy. So to make this list, I just laid out all the books and kind of thought through what I liked about all the couples, what I didn't like, and where I thought that I would rank them all. And whenever I had them all side by side, I was surprised in how the top 5 played out. So we are staying in the world of Sarah J. Maas for number 5, and that is going to be Rhys and Feyre from ACOTAR as well. Their romance kind of really blossoms in A Court of Mist and Fury. They are introduced as characters in ACOTAR, but this book is where things really get going for them. So again, I love a morally gray character. I love an enemies to lovers style story. Feyre and Rhys were one of my favorite couples for the longest time, and I was an avid reader as a kid. When I got into high school and college, where, you know, classes were more intensive, there were other activities going on, working, and then, you know, getting a grown-up job and still taking classes and all of those things, I just kind of I didn't lose my love of reading, I just kind of forgot to prioritize it. And so there were I would say several years where I just wasn't reading books for enjoyment. And I finally decided to get back into that habit, and ACOTAR is the first fantasy series that I visited, and that's what made me fall in love with reading again and fall in love with that genre. And so Rhys and Feyre, I think, will always hold a really special place in my heart. However, I am not blind to the problems with this book and the problems with their relationship. I mean, he essentially tortures her in the first book, makes her do some really, really horrible things, all in the name of keeping her safe. And I mean, he does explain it in this book. I just think that they are unforgivable to a point, and I think because I'm in a healthy relationship and I know that this is not realistic, I think I'm able to overlook it and to just enjoy the characters for what they are, but it is problematic, like, don't get me wrong. So for that reason, they've been docked a couple of points and they are number 5 on my list. Now, I would say as a reader, I'm not as big of a fan as urban fantasy as I am traditional fantasy, and so even though I was a huge fan of Sarah J. Maas, I was really reluctant to read Crescent City, but I did decide to pick it up when the second book was announced and there was a release date. And much to my surprise, Crescent City has become my preferred series over ACOTAR that she has written. And of course, as I said, I haven't read Throne of Glass, so that very well may change. But being that Crescent City is a series I prefer over ACOTAR, that would also mean that Bryce and Hunt from Crescent City are ranked higher on my list. Bryce and Hunt, I think, have a much healthier relationship. Still problematic, not nearly as problematic as Rhys and Feyre. I think they're very supportive of each other, and I think that they help each other get through these traumatic experiences that they have. They start out as just friends, and so it's a little bit different than Rhys and Feyre. While I think they do build a friendship first, there's this undertone of them being mates, and so that kind of drives a lot of the plot, especially once you find that out and then are reflecting back on the earlier parts of the book. And with Bryce and Hunt, that is not the case. It is very much like a forced proximity situation where they are forced to work together very closely, kind of just develop a friendship, really start to care for each other, and things take off from there. So that is why I am ranking Bryce and Hunt at number 4 and Rhys and Feyre at number 5. Number 3 was actually not one that was on the list from ChatGPT, but I felt that I needed to add it, being that it's relevant, and that is going to be Violet and Xaden from Fourth Wing. Imagine my surprise when I ranked this higher than any Sarah J. Maas, anything at all. But I do think that I prefer Violet and Xaden to those other couples. There is still an element of he's trying to kill her for a brief period of time. There's still an element of lots of secrets, lots of lying, lots of selective truths. However, I do think that I prefer their relationship. They do truly want to have a strong relationship that makes sense. So while it may start off just very physical because of this connection that they have through their dragons, they know that they need more than that, and they work to develop a friendship and a true relationship with trust that works for them. Now, here's the thing. I'm a sucker for a good fantasy romance. A lot of them are super overkill. Like, it's just crazy. And I know that, and I love it. So is this a lot? Yes, it really is a lot, but I also love that. And so I think that's why it's so highly ranked on my list. However, the last two I think you'll see are, okay, well, the next one I think is a little more realistic. The last one, not so much. But anyway, I do feel like there are more realistic couples that have been written. But again, it's just that like crazy over-the-top fantasy style, and you just have to love it for what it is. Couple number 2, coming in just shy of first place, is going to be Roman and Iris from Divine Rivals. This was such a great series. I love the writing style of Rebecca Ross. I think she develops really great characters, and I think the way that she writes them and their relationship is just so good. And this is an example of a couple that's not really like over the top, just absolutely unhinged. It is very realistic given the fantasy setting. And so Roman and Iris do start out as rivals. However, they soon realize that they've been connected more than they thought they had, and that they truly do care about each other. It does start with a sort of friendship first that develops, and especially in the second book, you really see the lengths that they go to protect each other, and I think it's just super sweet. Little spoiler for the end, though I do have reviews of this book and the second one, so I guess it's not that big of a spoiler. They do get their happy ending. Unlike a lot of fantasy books where they're like the ruler or the king or the high lord or whatever, you know, some sort of position of power at the end, these two just have their quiet little cottage that they share, and it's just this quiet, peaceful life together, and it's just so idyllic and so cute, and I just really cheered for them the whole way. My heart broke many, many times in the story, and I was so happy that they were together at the end. All right, we have made it to the last one, and shocking to some, but not that surprising at all. This is my favorite couple out of this list for many, many reasons. Partially because they are written by one of my favorite authors, and that is Jude and Cardan from the Cruel Prince Folk of the Air series. I have let somebody borrow my copy of the Cruel Prince, so I'm just holding up the second book. But I know I just went on this long explanation of how I love couples for how realistic they are, and Jude and Cardan are not that at all, because they are just cutthroat killers, strategists. They are mean and calculating, and there's just something about that makes me absolutely love them. Now, do they really care for each other? Absolutely. They are so supportive to each other as a couple. Their origin story per se is not the norm. They truly do start out as enemies and trick each other along the way, and you know, can't deny their feelings for each other. But I think, again, I just love the writing style of Holly Black. I think she creates these really amazing worlds that in some regards hold true to the way that these myths and tales and everything about fae and fairies were originally told. And so I love that it's so dangerous. And because of that, I fell in love with the characters as well, and Jude and Cardan were, of course, my favorites. This series has since expanded, and there's now a second series about Jude's younger brother, Oak. And so the story just continues, and you continue to see glimpses of Jude and Cardan together, and I just really love their relationship. So more just out of loving the author and the world she's created, Jude and Cardan are number one for me. So that is my list of 10 fantasy couples and how I would rank them. I would love to know who would be in your top 10, how you would rank them, and if you would disagree with any of the rankings that I gave today. So let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.